Hello and welcome to our video presentation about transboundary biosphere reserves in transformation countries. First, I will talk you through our methods during the last couple of weeks. First, we were researching for general information to just get a general understanding of the given topic and to agree on a specific topic and a structure. Then we were finding our research examples we talk about during this video, and we were distributing our sub-items of the structure. The third step was then intensive research by ourselves with weekly group meetings where we could talk about difficulties and just questions we have. And at the end we were presenting each other's findings and shooting this video for you. And of course we were also facing some challenges during that time. Communication was not always easy because we have two different native languages, and we are not able to see each other. But I think we managed it quite well. So now we come finally to our presentation. First we talk about a short introduction, then we will hear about our three research areas: the Eastern Carpathian Biosphere Reserve, the Danube Delta, the Carpathian Biosphere Reserve in collaboration with the Marmoush Mountains. And at the end we talk about realistic scenarios for the future. And yeah, like I said, we've been working on the topic of transboundary biosphere reserves in transformation countries. And but before we dig into that, I will clarify some essential terms. It all starts with communication and cooperation, and there exists a variety of participating actors. It can, for example, take place between single individuals, ethnic groups, companies, organizations, governmental institutions, like in our case. They all might have different target issues and goals, but the principle is always the same. The involved parties are willing to collaborate for a joint goal and a mutual benefit through developing a common strategic plan and management. Due to expansion of capacities and being able to share knowledge, the efficiency of reaching the goal as well as the general relationship between the parties gets improved. And for a TBR, such cooperation is on an international level needed to achieve a uniform way of conservation and sustainability of ecosystems across political borders. Yeah, the ecosystems in Europe are already highly fragmented due to the dense population. To secure the functioning of valuable transboundary areas, countries should work together instead of using different and conflicting managements, since nature does not know borders. Biosphere reserves are combining conservation, research, education, tourism, and sustainable land use through their core, buffer, and transition areas. Due to this zonation, landowners in the buffer and transition areas have to deal with less prohibitions, while protection of the core areas can still be guaranteed. Summarized, the needs of nature and people are getting fulfilled, in addition to improvement of the economic development from the region. The importance of transboundary protected areas in general is already known since a couple decades. The setup of 25 cross-border protected areas in Europe got suggested in 1994 from the IUCN, and in the same decade the first TBRs were established. Up until now, UNESCO certified 20 TBRs in 31 countries distributed on the entire globe, of which 12 are taking place in 15 European countries. To become a TBR, first each country has to establish a biosphere reserve on their own. Governmental authorities have to sign an official agreement, And a common definition of the three zones in form of characteristics and place, as well as a joint management plan, are required for that. During the ongoing video, we will figure out how that works out in practice by engaging with different TBRs. Therefore, we decided to have a closer look into Eastern Europe. Those countries are also known as transformation countries. Based on their young age, the more or less economically unstable situation, and the process to follow the lead of Western countries. It will be interesting to identify the challenges and benefits, as well as disadvantages those countries are facing due to establishing TBRs. Furthermore, two of the first ever certified TBRs, the Eastern Carpathian Biosphere Reserve of Ukraine, Poland, and Slovakia, and also the Danube Delta of Ukraine and Romania, are located there, which we choose to have a look at. Additionally, we will research the Maramuresh Mountains, where Ukraine and Romania are trying to establish a new TBR.
I'd like to talk about Eastern Carpathian Biosphere Reserve, located at the confluence of state borders of Poland, Slovakia and Ukraine. The East Carpathian Biosphere Reserve is a unique treasure of global importance, combining immense wildlife values with the rich cultural heritage. It contains some of the least disturbed ecosystems, part of the largest European natural beech forest complex, and protects endemic and threatened mountain plant species and communities. An area of transboundary cooperation. The first trilateral East Carpathian Biosphere Reserve was designed in 1998, uniting the bilateral Polish-Slovak one set in 1992 with the Ukraine part. This second-largest European mountain biosphere reserve accounts for 200,000 hectares and encompasses 7 protected areas. The main difficulties are lack of understanding of the biosphere reserve program within each country, lack of legal status for biosphere reserves, difficult political context regarding transboundary cooperation, lack of sustained interest in transboundary cooperation. In spite of troubles, there are benefits of cooperation. The experience gained by the three partners has concerned various fields. Funding. Each side has benefited from increased funding as a direct or indirect effect of the trilateral biosphere reserve. Existing and potential international donors are attracted to the area in part because of the precedent set by the cooperation. Learning. Each side has had the opportunity to learn from the experience of all three areas, each going through political and economic changes at different rates. Having three partners has created a situation of healthy competition with different partnerships for different projects. Maintaining momentum, the areas has achieved a critical level of international visibility projects to snowball and attract further interest from a wider circle of donors. The TBR has made intelligent use of its current status as the world's first trilateral biosphere reserve, using this as a quality label for uniqueness. Building human capacity. The presence of the TBR has raised the status of the area, allowing a certain number of staff members to attend international meetings, both within the UNESCO map networks and beyond. This has increased exposure to current trends in international conversation and planning, as well as contributing to a better understanding of the biosphere reserve model.
Thank you for listening so far. I'll now explain the origins of the Transboundary Biosphere Reserve in the Danube Delta. The Danube Delta is at the end of the Danube River, which flows into the Black Sea. It is the second largest river delta in Europe and contains huge wetlands, reed beds and steppe. It has been recognized as an important nature site with international influence because of the high biodiversity and the high population of migrating birds, which fly there every year to nest and fish. The importance and worthiness of protection has been recognized as early as 1938 in Romania, and a later result being the designation as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1991. 1981, a natural reserve was designated in the Danube Delta on the Ukrainian side near the reserve of Romania. In 1998, they joined together with the help of the Man and Biosphere program of UNESCO to form a Transboundary Biosphere Reserve. 83% of the Transboundary Biosphere Reserve is located in Romania and 17% in Ukraine. The Soviet Union, which the Ukraine was part of, fell apart late 1992. The tensions were still high between Romania and the Ukraine, making this collaboration unusual. It got kick-started by two national World Bank projects managed by the Global Environment Facility. They organized and funded several meetings. The aim was to find common goals for the biosphere reserves, and this project ran from 1994 to 1998. There were also several staff exchanges, especially in the scientific field. In 2000, the Transboundary Biosphere Reserve was a topic in the Seville +5 International Meeting of Experts in Pamplona. It was discussed how well they adapted the Seville strategy, and the implementation of a coordinating council was forwarded. This council had 12 members, 6 from each country. Then rules and guidelines were set out on how this council should work and what their responsibilities were. I think the biggest challenge on both sides was the funding. The Romanian side was fully state-funded, while the Ukrainian side also used profits from fishing licensing and reed collecting. Later on, the Danube Delta Biosphere Reserve got involved in bigger, more international projects. This made their funding more secure, but was only possible because they were already experienced in making connections and representing the importance of the conservation of the Danube Delta. Apropos fishing, I think it was the most difficult topic for the biosphere reserves. They had to make huge efforts in local communities to regulate fishing, which is one of the oldest traditions there. In conclusion, the TBR was successful because both countries recognized the importance of managing this ecosystem together and showed the political will to cooperate. They were able to secure international funds because of their experience, their connection to the EU, and the charismatic nature of the Danube Delta ecosystem. Now I will go into the challenges this TBR faced and how it surmounted them. Romania had better relationships with the EU and was nominated as Center of Excellence in Delta and Wetland Management, providing them $1 million for 3 years, but they were not allowed to use it on cooperation with the Ukraine. The EU provided funding for the Romanian side, but complicated the relationship by pressuring Romania into enforcing the border. Thus, Romania introduced visas for Ukrainian people. This made it harder and more expensive to cross the border. Speaking of border, they also had little infrastructure to cross it. Ferry routes had to be scouted and then realized. When talking about the early meetings of both sides, it is important to mention that there was a language barrier. They chose to talk in English, which was seen as neutral language. Both sides had to make a big effort to learn this language, showing the will to cooperate. I mentioned before that the surface of the TBR was very unequally distributed, the Romanian side being a lot larger. Still, they accepted to be equal partners in managing the TBR. For example, the Council has an equal amount of representatives for each country.
Now I would like to present you a TBR that has not been established yet. It is planned to be established in the Marmush Mountains, which are located in the eastern Carpathians on the Ukrainian-Romanian border. The Marmush Mountains are an important cultural, historical and natural heritage site equally shared by Ukraine and Romania. The Carpathian Biosphere Reserve was established as a strict nature reserve in 1968. In 1992, the Carpathian Biosphere Reserve was officially recognized by the UNESCO Man and the Biosphere program and became part of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. The CBR has a total area of approximately 58,000 hectares. Nearly 90% of its area is covered by forest ecosystems, predominantly by primary rainforests. Also, the biosphere reserve harbor many plant and animal species which are rare or even on the red list of the IUCN. The Marmush Mountains Nature Park is located in the north of Romania, directly bordering with the Ukraine. The nature park is very biodiverse, containing a considerable number of rare plant species. Between the Carpathian Biosphere Reserve and Romania has been an ongoing cooperation for years now, especially since the MMNP was established in the early 2000s, aiming to create a TBR in the Marmush Mountain region, on the basis of the CBR and the MMNP. The idea of a TBR came up shortly after the establishment of the CBR, but first discussions took place after passing the Carpathian Convention, through which the creation of the TBR has been foreseen by the Ukrainian cabinet. To support the creation of a TBR in this region, the project Bioregio Carpathians was implemented from 2011 to 2014, which is based on the framework of the Carpathian Convention, funded by the EU. Nevertheless, some challenges prevent the creation of the TBR. A fundamental problem for the creation of the TBR in the Marmush Mountains was, on the Romanian side, the missing status of a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Looking to the CBR, problems with the territorial structure were preventing the establishment of the TBR. The Carpathian massifs that formed part of the CBR were disconnected, and only a small part of its territory was adjoining the Ukrainian-Romanian border. But the CBR reached its goal to unite all parts to one territory through connecting the scattered massifs, with so-called transitional areas between them, that were recognized by the UNESCO MAP program, here shown in yellow. Nevertheless, TBR could not be established because, amongst other things, the MMNP until now has not obtained the status of a biosphere reserve, one reason being that they did not get the approval of the local communities. Other challenges they are facing is the fact that meetings in person between the CBR and the MMNP are difficult to implement and therefore rare, even though the distance between the headquarters is relatively small. This is, amongst other things, due to missing direct public transport connections. Another barrier of communication is the limited experience with handling technical resources for long-distance communication, as well as language barriers limit the exchange between the partners. Also, in the last few years, the communication between the CBR and the MMNP has decreased, one reason being staff fluctuations in the nature park. Reasons for the creation of an TBR in the Marmush Mountains are, first of all, that the creation of a TBR would help to preserve important common cultural, historical and natural heritage on the Ukrainian-Romanian border. Another reason for the need of a TBR are nature's borderlines that often do not match artificially drawn borders. This is the case in the Marmush Mountain region. The Marmush Mountains are one ecosystem containing many important ecological corridor migration routes for bigger mammoths like bears, despite of the border. The preservation of those bigger mammals is the main reason for the establishment of a TBR in the Marmush Mountains, aiming to protect the ecosystem they are part of.
And despite the usefulness of transboundary biosphere reserves creation, the management of protected area which is close to state borders is rarely considered as an urgent need by governments. Setting up a zone dedicated to conservation is already a challenge. Main goals of such kind of reserves are cooperation in so-called development area, and this cooperation gives a list of advantages compared to isolated protected areas. Contribution to the conservation of biodiversity, protection of national heritage, rising ecosystem resilience, effectiveness of protection regime, prevention of research duplication, development of international tourism, creation of a unified infrastructure, handicrafts, employment of the local population. All these issues turns the disadvantages of peripheral development into the possibility of cross-border cooperation. The first scenario is optimistic. It says that the perspectives of cross-border protected areas creation in transformation countries are good. It's broadly based on how the changes in the economic and political life in transition countries would be rapid and continuous. If in the short term Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova and other post-communist countries take serve actions across the economy, including the political sector, it would cause the country's transparency for partners. This scenario has a low probability. Another one is a realistic baseline or as usual scenario. It says that the perspectives of cross-border protected areas creation in transformation countries are still unsure. It depends on a list of challenges, because all the developing countries spend a long time on the changing of the political and economical arrangement and the founding of financial resources for transboundary biosphere reserves creation. Political and institutional issues such as financial industrial groups affiliated with government structures, differences in legislation between countries. Ukraine and other countries still has not completed the implementing regulations with the European countries. An obstacle is the consumer culture in relation to natural resources, territory, forest resources, etc.
Thank you for listening to our presentation and for your attention. I will show you really quick now our references. We hope we could make clear how important TBRs, as well as transboundary protected areas in general, for ecosystems are. That is of course not only the case in Eastern Europe, but the entire globe. Ecosystems are living from the interactions between their inhabitants. Different managements on either side of the man-made political borders are decreasing the functioning of such open, dynamical systems.